Welcome to Revive Ministries podcast. This month is an important month for me because it addresses both substance use disorder and suicide prevention. And also, well, I'll leave it till later. My guest will tell you what else September addresses. But I want to also share with you that sometimes, from my experience, holding on to something when the storm of uncertainty and pain, sometimes that's all we can do. Sometimes all we can do is those little steps. Say, I'm going to try again tomorrow. Sometimes it's our faith that keeps us grounded, or sometimes it's our coping skills that helps us, or both. Holding on to hope reflects on my experience of recovery. Today, I have a new guest. Her name is Fatima, and I'm very excited to have her here with me today. And thank you, Fatima, for joining us and just sharing your insight. It's always a hard topic, suicide. And then you talk about substance use, and we just talk about people. That's what we're talking about, is really people. And I just want to thank you for agreeing to be a guest with us today.
Oh no, the pleasure is all mine. I really appreciate you sharing your platform so that we could talk life together.
Yeah, and I always share this, especially in the beginning. It's a disclaimer for those in crisis. Please seek appropriate professional help. The crisis hotline in the United States is 1-800-273-8255. But wherever you are across the world, you always try to find the resources that are there for you. It's not perfect, but why do we do this? Why do we talk about this? Is because of the people. I always start out with a quote, and this is from Napoleon Bonaparte. It's kind of funny, but he says, "Courage isn't having the strength to go on; it's going on when you don't have the strength." So, what comes to mind, Fatima, when you hear this quote?
Shoot, honestly, my life.
Yeah.
Because there have been so many instances where I truly felt like I just can't do this. Like I just can't. I don't have it in me to move on. I don't know what to do. And honestly, I'm just drained. It's
Yeah.
like I've worked so hard emotionally to keep going that
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wore out, and yet finding the grit inside of me that I didn't know was there to
Mm-hmm.
just get up another day or to try a different solution or to
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit of a faith or hope, just a little bit extra than what I thought was possible, and just pushing through one moment to the next moment, and then being able to get on the other side and realizing, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I came through it. I didn't realize that I was getting through it while I was saying I don't think I can. I was actually doing it. And
Yeah.
so there have been multiple situations in my life where I have truly felt that life had me submerged underwater and I couldn't swim, and somehow I found a life raft.
Yeah. You know, um, when it comes to uncertainty, when it comes to these topics, I always talk about a safe place. A lot of times it doesn't even have to be, there's a difference between a house and a home, right? Yeah, house is just a place you stay. A home is something you build. I want to, for me, a lot of people who listen to me or heard me before, I say this in exhaustion. Helping people became my healing. Ultimately, serving others became my recovery.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, I could get trapped in myself of what I don't have. I've been in so many groups, Fatima, and I've facilitated many, and I never see healing when all we talk about is what we don't have. And it's not about addressing and minimizing those times of uncertainties, those storms in life. It's just what's next, what now. You talk about those little steps, and you talk about like sometimes it's just saying I'm gonna try again tomorrow. That's
Yeah.
all you could do. I want to give you a moment to kind of share a little bit about your experience, your story recovering. A lot of times, I think everyone's story, I feel, kind of sheds a new light on, and I feel that those who are listening, and that's what I love to do, because it kind of personalizes the reason we talk about these things, because it's about our friends and families.
Yeah.
People like, I don't have suicidal ideations, but maybe, or I don't have substance use, but you may know someone. You may have a friend, a colleague, a family member. So the reach is unfortunately stretches long. But I want to share. I want to ask you, despite my experience, I want to ask you, Fatima, would you mind sharing a bit of your experience, whatever you feel comfortable with us today?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Absolutely. And again, thank you for having me. So for me, from as long as I can remember, I struggled with anxiety and depression. I had no idea where it came from, where it derived from. I just always felt gloomy or sad, hopeless, alone, just isolated, and my thoughts running rampant, just reminded me of how unhappy I was. And I mean, truly, from back till my first thought, like that's what I
mhm,
remember, just always feeling. And I believe that, and it was because of, a lot of because of the way that I grew up and the different things that I went through. I've been through sexual abuse and physical abuse, domestic violence, from my spouse, and I lost a child and lost a loved one, and even had a accident that left me deformed on about 25% of my body. So from whence I can remember, I've struggled with feeling shame or ridicule or embarrassment, and just a cloudiness of unworthiness. And I
mhm,
truly just carried that throughout my entire life, at least
mhm,
until my mid 40s, when I decided to break up with depression,
mhm.
to break up
Yeah.
with it. But it was just like I mean, it was as close to me as my skin, because I
Mhm,
was used to it being around me, and I kept most of everything inside. And so a lot of rapid thoughts in my head. That's where I rationalized everything. So my thought process was my best friend, but also my worst enemy.
yeah.
And really, by the time I hit my early 30s, is when I realized that I needed help, and went and sought a professional and found that I had clinical depression. I had no
Mhm,
idea that that's what I was experiencing. And then
mhm,
from there, of course, I got on medicine, but from there, it still took me 10 more years, maybe
mhm,
even 12, before I was willing to go and speak with someone to figure out, why do I
mhm,
have anxiety and depression? Like,
mhm,
what is the why behind all this? That's why am I like this? Why am I wired this way? And there are plenty of times where I tried to in my life, without, when I didn't have children and when I did have children,
mhm,
and seemingly had my life together, but the enemy of my mind was telling me that I couldn't go on. And so I definitely was in a spiral type of situation, to the point where it scared me. It scared me. I didn't recognize myself, and I eventually went and got help. But even through that entire process of trying to figure out what the why was behind my anxiety and depression, it didn't take away the
mhm.
effects of the anxiety and depression.
Yeah, yeah,
It didn't take it away, right? So
yeah.
I understand more about myself. I did the groundwork and faced my truths, and faced a lot of horrible things that happened in my life, like I had mentioned before. Did the leg work to really peel back the layers in my life to figure out where that pain was coming from.
Yeah.
Even in doing that, I was still habitually dealing with anxiety and depression, and I had to come to a reality that that may be something that I have to challenge for the rest of my life, and to learn how to cope with that as a thorn in my side, and not allow it to overtake my life,
Mhm.
but find some type of purpose in the midst of the pain. And that sounds like what you have been talking about,
Yeah.
figuring out. I mean, how much longer can you talk about the same stuff? Eventually, you have to decide on what
Mhm,
you're going to do. And so, for me,
mhm,
that is that whole journey of going to get help, kind of rediscovering myself, or really finding myself for the first time through my pain,
mhm,
finding myself for the first time, learning what works best for me, what doesn't, what I had to, who was toxic in my life, who wasn't,
mhm,
how I needed to separate myself from certain people that instigated my anxiety or instigated my depression, just really revamping my life. And in that process, I stumbled into what I consider my calling as far as helping other people
Mm,
to deal with emotional vulnerability.
mm,
And I'm so grateful that my faith sent me in that direction. In
yeah.
something, it started with something that was really terrorizing my life and
Hmm.
ended with me being able to be on the other side to help other people. And that is crazy to me that I can
Hmm.
even say that.
Yeah.
But that is a bit of my story, that I went through a horrible time, lived with the anxiety and depression most of my life when I didn't even have a definition for it. And even when I got a definition for it, it didn't help it to go away, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And then just really diving into, for me, I needed to understand what was going on with me and where a lot of this had come from. And it really had to do with trauma and
Mm,
trauma from my past and my childhood, but
mm,
working through as much as I could to release a lot of that pain, yet still understanding that this is something that I may challenge for the rest of my life. And it doesn't mean that I'm weak. It
mm,
doesn't mean that my faith is not strong.
mm,
It doesn't mean any of that. If anything, it means that I'm courageous because
mm.
I get up every day and I work harder than most people to remain here on earth,
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
And I do a lot more mental work and emotional remodeling than most people, so that
mm.
I can have an awesome relationship with my children, be here as long as possible, and leave a great legacy.
That's wonderful. And thank you, Fatima, for sharing. It's never easy to share. I was listening to your story, it just reminded me of my journey. I wanted to know what's wrong with me, first
Right.
thing. But the thing is, what happens, and this is kind of funny. I'm like, okay, there's something wrong. What is wrong with me? I find out, and then I'm no longer Robert. I'm that diagnosis. And then I
Right.
stay there for a while, and then I'm like, no, wait a minute. I am still Robert.
Right.
I am not
Yeah.
that diagnosis. You spoke about trauma. I think someone told me this. I thought it was the best illustration, especially me personally. It's like when you're in the forest and there's a bear, you have this survival instinct, then
Yeah.
it's appropriate. But whatever that bear is when you're at home in a family gathering, or you're trying to go to sleep, or you're
Right.
with your spouse, that's the closest thing I can find with trauma, because you get those panic attacks, you're having the physical and all these emotional responses to something that clearly is not there, but maybe triggered, or maybe something reminded you of something of that. So,
Yep.
uh,
Absolutely. You
and
become like hyper vigilant and
yeah, yeah,
hyper vigilant to something that may not even be a reality,
yeah,
but in your head it is very real.
yeah.
And you can cage yourself in. You put yourself in a cage
Hmm.
because of your mind, you know,
Yeah.
and that's an unfortunate thing.
Hmm.
But still, I believe that such greatness can come out of such a broken space.
Yeah.
If we allow it, if we are able to tell ourselves, I am not broken. This situation, like you said, I'm not my diagnosis. I'm
Hmm.
still me.
Hmm.
And being able to truly believe that, and just make a decision to change the narrative and say, my life is going to have purpose. I'm going
Hmm.
to do something with this. If
Yeah.
I'm working this hard to be here, I need to at least be doing something fulfilling,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. It's funny because I was in the military, and a lot of times in those movies are like, "I will die for you," but I love this quote that says right here. It says, "If you want to show me that you really love me, don't say that you want to die for me. Instead, stay alive for me." It's
Yeah,
amazing. Like
yeah,
it's hard. Like certain circumstances, there are some brave people. I'm not saying that. Those. You know, Memorial Day was not about just over a month ago, and we always tip our hats to those who made the ultimate sacrifice. But sometimes when we kind of each context is different. If I'm struggling with my recovery, the bravest thing I could do is stay alive.
absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely. If people only knew how much work that takes, like
yeah,
seriously, that takes a lot of inner strength that
yeah,
the most of society don't have to deal
mhm,
with, right? It takes so much strength. And I think that's where I had to reshape my thinking,
mhm,
because I felt ashamed
Mm-hmm.
and weak and embarrassed because number one, from where I grew up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, if you were allowed to show anger, anger was like passion. But if you showed anything outside of anger, if you showed sadness, if you
Mm-hmm.
showed disappointment, or you felt like a failure, anything that resembled a different sentiment, you were viewed as weak.
Yeah.
So me finding out that I really do have an issue that I can't fix on my own. I fix everything. I'm the fixer, but I can't fix this. I
Mm-hmm.
truly felt ashamed. I didn't want my friends to know. I didn't want my husband to know. I didn't want my mom
Mm-hmm.
to know. I didn't want anybody to know that I had to take medicine just so that my brain would balance out, or my emotions would balance out, and I could
Yeah.
think clearly. For me that was kind of shameful. And so I had to make myself understand that I was okay, and that there are plenty of people that are going through the same thing. I am not alone, and
Mm-hmm.
that if I continue to be quiet, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
perpetuating the problem. And so I
Mm.
had to make myself find the courage to speak up. And even on social media, when I would hear people saying stuff like they're so selfish, they committed suicide, they're so
Mm.
selfish, I had to be the one to speak out.
Yeah.
Speak out for those people who understand how much work it actually took to
Yeah.
live as long as you did. And a lot of times I was that anomaly. A lot of times
Mm-hmm.
I was the one that made the room go quiet because people didn't know that I dealt with that.
Mm.
But over time, I think especially with, I think, the pandemic,
Mm.
it really made speaking about mental awareness. If it's not normal, I guess it's popular, right?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it made it, I think, safer for a lot of people to admit what
Mm.
they have been struggling with for so many years quietly. So that's a good thing.
Mm.
But I had to find that bravery when it wasn't popular, you
Yeah.
know? And
And
so, yeah.
you mentioned before, there's one thing I used to say is it's okay to not be okay. But
Yeah.
let's stop fooling ourselves. Like a lot of times we're trying to be like, I don't know. I'm half South Korean. Okay, my mom had some high standards for me,
Right.
and it's just like the thing is that, and it's not like what I would say this. I love my parents. I can never pay them back, and that's okay. Imagine being a first generation American saying that stuff. It's horrible because you want to give back. You want to
Yeah.
buy them the house, the car, so they because you
Mm,
know all the hard work they went done for you. But
yeah.
the thing is, it's okay to not be okay, and kind of soaking that in. You talk about shame and value. It's very funny. Success is like, what is success? I've seen people work all their lives for stuff, and and then I'm not saying you build a financial foundation, but success looks like in different ways. It's around the people around you. Obviously I've been a leader in my church for a while, and you see people at their end of their stages. What does it matter? What I'm not talking about faith. It's the people around you. People around you at that last moment. Those
Yeah.
people, those friends and family members. Staying and choosing life is courageous. It is
Mm,
courageous. You mentioned the point. Sometimes when we're low, we may think a permanent choice seems more appealing. But I want to say again for those watching or listening, that there is a crisis hotline, and if you're feeling this way, if you're struggling, someone, call this number. Know the resources. I have friends who are not here today, and for me, even if you're like, oh, maybe I'm making a big deal. I'd rather get them annoyed for me caring a little bit more, because these things matter, and at the same time, it's okay to talk about. Suicide is always hard for many to talk about. When they talk about suicide, it's like, you mentioned the word selfish, but it's, when you're in pain, and emotional pain, sometimes it may feel like that's the best option. But
yeah.
when you're actually thinking about, when you build on that support network, when you have those small victories, when I didn't go well today, I'm gonna try again tomorrow. When you make set small goals, because I think sometimes we have these only if statements in our lives. Only if I get this will I be happy. Doesn't
Yeah.
happen,
Yeah.
because only if I go somewhere. I know a lot of people are not traveling. I want as much as before, but
Yeah.
you take yourself with you, don't you? Like you go to this island. It's nice, but you're taking yourself with you. So I just
Right. No,
recovery is, yeah.
yeah, I
Any kind of,
agree. No,
yeah.
I agree completely, Robert. My dad would say, be careful, especially when you're in a down or a spiral or
Mm,
a rock bottom type of situation. Be
mm,
careful about listening to yourself because you're in the room you're in a room with a crazy person. So
yeah,
you don't want to listen to that person, right?
yeah,
Yourself. You don't want to listen to yourself. You want to reach out and speak to somebody else. You don't want to take your own advice in
yeah,
that type of a situation when you know that you could possibly make bad decisions. That's when
yeah,
you want to stop listening to your conscience, right?
yeah.
But I want to tap on what you were talking about with the safe place because I'm such a huge proponent on
Mm,
having a safe place to fall. I talk about that a lot
yeah.
in the ministry that I have, and it is critical to me. That was one of the first things that I had to establish in
Hmm.
order for me to be able to have the courage to move forward in my own healing, my own soul healing journey. I
Mm,
had to at first know who was with me,
yeah,
basically.
yeah.
And so I was so grateful that I already had people in my life who had walked life with me, had
Mm,
seen me make it through surgeries, and had known my family. We've hung out together. We've prayed with each other. We've just did community and everything together. And so it was great to have them already, that foundation, so that when I really was at that place where I needed to just speak it, a lot of times, at least for me, I just needed to get it off my chest. I needed
mm,
to be able to say, this is my dark place and this is what I'm feeling in my dark place. But I felt like if I said it, people would think that I'm going crazy. So
yeah.
I wouldn't say it. And as long as it stays in my mind, it runs rampant.
Mm,
And every day I'm waking up with this thought: I want to kill myself. I want to kill myself. I want to
mm,
run my car through the intersection. I want to suffocate myself. Like I'm thinking this in my head, and I'm
mm,
not allowed to speak it because I'm afraid of what people are going to think. And that's a very dangerous place to be. With my
mm,
safe place, I was able to say, I have dark thoughts and this is what I'm thinking right now, and not feel that I was going to be judged. And it truly was critical. If they would have judged me and said, spoke to me in a tone that was like, something's really wrong with you and you need to get psychological help, and kind of like shunned me because of my thoughts, I would not, I doubt it very seriously that I would have taken a step to go to therapy or do anything, a program,
mm,
journaling, doing anything proactive to help myself. I wouldn't have done it because I
mm,
would have thought, okay, if that's what honesty gets me, then what's the point of being honest? But
yeah.
because I had a safe place, I had a group of people who may not, I feel like a safe place is any place where you can go and speak whatever is truly on your heart without judgment.
Mm,
They will listen to you, pray with you, or talk with you, stay with you until you make it past that moment. And allow you to just vent, say whatever is on your heart. Someone mentioned it as Carolyn Leaf. She mentions it as freaking out in the love zone. You
mm,
need some place where you can just say whatever.
mm,
And if I would not have had that place, I would not have made it. And sometimes we think that place is maybe it should be our spouse or it should
mm,
be our parents, but sometimes that's not the case.
mm,
And my safe place were like girlfriends that I
mm,
had, a select few. It was not a lot of people, a
mm,
select few people that I had grown to trust, and they trusted me. And so I could share that information. And when they said, Fatima, I think you need to do this, I was able to not get offended, feeling like they were kind of talking about me or being
mm,
cruel to me, but that
mm,
they were really trying to help me, which is what I needed.
mm,
And that was the push that I needed to be able to start working on myself. It's critical to have a safe place to fall, someone, at least one person that you can speak to in confidence, knowing that what you say is not going to go anywhere and that they are going to be there for you and not say, oh, well, I feel you, and then never pick up your call again. It's
yeah.
important for everybody to at least have that one person.
You talk about safe place. In the beginning, I was talking about groups, and one of the biggest um, I guess the biggest, complaints I would say is not being heard. That's it.
Yes.
That is it. I look at sometimes because I'm in the field of social services in my professional field, and a lot of times I feel like it's you just have to. I did a lot of math in college, and it was awful, but I went through it. But the derivative. You go to the derivative of a problem. A lot of times emotionally, we have the derivatives, and it could just feel like I feel not heard. I feel sad.
Right.
I feel left out. And like we make things so complicated. We have a lot of this and that, but really it's just we have that kind of sometimes you just feel left out. A lot of times misunderstandings. At least I felt, at least what I've seen personally for myself or in my professional career. People just not feeling heard. They feel like they're just like mismanaged, or people are more in tune of body language than people will actually think. They think you just say a lot of fancy words. No, they want they want to feel heard. They don't
Yes.
want solutions sometimes. They just want
Right.
you to sit there. Because
Yes.
I feel sometimes I've heard people say a lot of things, maybe it may seem concerning, but for me, I know that this person, whoever, whatever they're saying, whatever may be not quote unquote normal for society, I know that this person's sad. I don't know the last time this person actually was heard ever
Right.
before. So you kind of have
Yeah.
to look at that, and I kind of segue to stigma. Stigma impacts, how has stigma impact your journey to recovery? I feel it impacts everyone different ways. Culturally, we can't ignore the cultural factors. You mentioned
Yeah.
where you live, and culturally is a huge thing. Like for
Yeah.
me, my mom, I did a lot of acupuncture. Tell you that much in New York, because they were trying to figure out what was going on. It did help, but it wasn't. It wasn't everything. A holistic approach, I believe, can
Yeah.
be very helpful, but it's never just one thing. But
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
how stigma impacted you?
Yes, a similar, especially with what you were saying, there were high expectations. And
Mm,
so, there was high expectations as far as emotionally how I was supposed to be tough as Teflon.
yeah.
And I grew up with all brothers. So I was the only girl out of actually five brothers. And yeah, and so there was no precious princess. It was like get in where you fit in. I was treated the same.
Yeah.
For the most part, I was raised the same. I was disciplined the same. So I was spoke to the same. There
Mm,
was no differentiation. So then I lived my life as a youth, as a young adult, then as a grown woman with kids and trying to do relationships, trying to make friendships. And I'm emotionally disconnected because I've been told, not necessarily told you're weak, but told you're too sensitive or you wear your feelings on your sleeves. You need to toughen
mm,
up. I'm told that.
mm,
So I'm thinking if I cry,
mm,
if I show any type of sadness or remorse, that I need to toughen up. And so that's what I would tell myself when I
mm,
would try to pep myself up, and I felt horrible. I felt so sad and unloved and unheard. I
mm,
would tell myself, Fatima, toughen up,
mm.
shake that off. You're
Yeah.
tougher than that. Don't you cry. I would tell myself to not
Yeah.
cry, to not show the emotion. And it was because of how I grew up. It's
Mm,
that stigma of if you show any other type of emotion beyond this drama or anger, then you are weak. And nobody wants to feel weak.
yeah.
And so
Exactly.
that was a stigma in my community or culturally beyond and the fact that we didn't do counseling. It was like,
Yeah.
you're not going to go talk to anybody,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
not going to go sit on a couch
Yeah.
and tell people
Yeah.
your business.
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
wrong with you,
You
right?
got time for that? Yeah.
Right. No, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that. So it was like I can't show my emotions and
Mm,
I can't talk to anybody. And
yeah.
then if there were things that were about my childhood that were not right, that was not discussed in my home, then I'm told I shouldn't talk about that. So that means I'm just silenced.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm living silence, like you're silencing a grown up. You're silencing me. So I'm not able to break free. A lot of times, like you said, we need to be heard. We need to be able to speak those things that are pulling on our soul.
Mm,
But if we're not allowed to speak it, then we die.
yeah.
We die. And
Mm,
so emotionally you die, mentally, and then and God forbid,
Mm,
physically, but it's like you deteriorate from the
mm,
inside out. And I had to break free from that. But even making the decision to break free and to speak about these things that was kind of like an unspoken rule to never discuss. I was the one that went outside of the rule and there were consequences. But
mm,
even in the midst of that, I feel so much more free because I
mhm,
did what was right for Fatima. And so, like you're saying, sometimes we just want to be heard. We don't want to be fixed. We just need to say it. We need to speak it because we've been thinking it for so long.
mm, mm,
It's tattooed on our heart. We need to be able to speak it to someone so that from there we can process whatever that thing was. If it's just I'm sad, okay, now let's process why you're sad. Or I'm so angry or I hate that person. Now let's process why you feel that you hate that person. But until you're able to process what you're feeling, you can't heal it.
mm,
And I think just, unfortunately in my community or in my culture, there is a lot of getting over it, just get over
mm,
it. There's a
mm,
lot of pretend that it doesn't exist and move on. And your accolades or your accomplishments, like you were saying, the house or the car or this or that, that says you're healthy, that says you're successful, that says you're rich.
mhm.
Your family is wonderful because of the things that you have, and
Yeah.
not about what is truly going on the inside of you.
I like to always, when it comes to stigma, one of my friends, he has a sister who's autistic, nonverbal all her life.
Mm,
Okay. And first time I met her, because she's in the home, he would tell me, oh, you go, this is explaining, over explaining. I'm like, this person has never spoken. I can't imagine how she feels. Yet you're over explaining, and it just goes to show just how other people reacted.
yeah.
I'm just spending like a few hours with this person. She spent it
Mhm.
her whole life. It
Wow.
really shows like how skewed that is. Like a little discomfort. What she says, she acts a
Right.
certain way. That
Right.
for me is stigma, because at the end of the day, I've read a book of someone who had a child who had cancer, terminal, about to die young, and she said it was a horrible experience, but at the same time, all those expectations were out the window. She just could love the child
Wow.
without all that. Just
Yeah.
love him, and without all the only ifs, he needs to do this or that.
Yeah.
Unconditional, just
Mm.
love without all that. And at the
Wow.
same time, I think with stigma, I thought that story in my mind really says it. And I know it's autism, but like, I feel it shares my view of how stigma can play an awful role. My friend is over explaining about someone that honestly, I feel very sad hearing it. I felt sad hearing this person feel so urgent to explain so much when
Yeah.
it's just a few hours with the person. It just goes to show how little on discomfort we kind of over explain for others,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
less.
And try to
But
avoid it. And we try to avoid it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And so even in our recovery, we don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable. So
Mm,
sometimes we don't talk about those things that we need to say.
mm,
And then those people who are trying to support us, they feel uncomfortable because they've never walked in our shoes.
mhm,
And so I think somewhere there has to be, I think there are levels to relationships. And so you got to know where your relationship level
mm,
is at with
mm.
people.
Yeah,
But those people that you do life with and those people that are like family to you or are family, I think they deserve that uncomfortable conversation,
yeah,
right? They
yeah,
deserve that moment to where you're saying, this is my pain point and I need to do something about this.
yeah.
And, or I don't know how to help you, but I'll do my best to. I don't know what you're going through because I've never lived with it before, but I'll do my best to support you however way you need me to. We're on one side or the other, and when you really care about somebody, it's just worth having that uncomfortable conversation, the ones that you avoid. It's worth having those talks because those talks could make the difference between them being here or not.
Exactly. And I want to get to this. I was talking to you before.
Yeah.
We do not proselytize, however, encouraging finding the why in life. And I'm gonna kind of lead. This is one of the last questions before I ask your final thoughts. Fatima, what is your why that helps you hold on to hope? It's holding on to hope this month, so
Yeah.
September. So, what is your why?
My why is because I know that there is greater purpose for what I went through, and that
Hmm.
was revealed to me in my journey. And so
Hmm.
it's an extension of healing for me to be able to continue to walk out my healing journey, but also to help other people. And that is what I currently am active in doing. And being able to see that my pain, the things that I went through to get where I'm at today didn't happen in vain. There was
Hmm.
greater purpose for it, and it wasn't just to make my life better, but my story has actually helped so many other people. And I would not have known that if I would not have taken the step forward. So in the beginning, I was just trying to stay alive. But as I walked through the process, walked through the journey of my own healing journey, I realized that it was so much more than about me. And that
Hmm.
is my why. My children didn't even resonate enough in my head for me to want to stay here on this planet. My husband did it, my friends did it. Knowing
Hmm.
that I'm doing a service for other people by being honest about my story, that
Hmm.
is what my why is.
That's wonderful. For me, thinking about it, I just my why I believe is Albert Einstein says it this way: the one intelligence is the measure to adapt to change. Unfortunately, we live a world that constantly changes. There's a lot of uncertainty. I say I don't proselytize, but one thing about faith that helps me that everything changes, but through my faith, God doesn't change. So
Absolutely.
that's the one constant. Like, so for me, that's comforting because, like, seasons of life, seasons of recovery, um, changes. My parents are getting older. It's hard to see sometimes. People get older, they get, elder, they get sick. Things constantly change. It's nice, at least for my why, when I'm helping others, to know that there's also that kind of rock, that kind of foundation that helps me center me. For me, I just, the Apostle Paul says, "When I am strong, when I am weak, then I am strong." It's kind
Mhm.
of one of those opposite days kind of moments. Like, well, how does that make sense? Fundamentally, we've been talking all this time. We have to have that thick skin. When you were talking about one thing I used to tell myself: desensitize the sensitivities. All through my 20s, like that was going to help me, because
Right,
I thought that if I showed that I wasn't hurt, then I will be stronger.
right.
Instead, it didn't work out that way. But at the same time, it gave me an opportunity to kind of see what is important, and what is important is having these conversations, having the people around us, building that support network, and understanding that it's okay to not be okay. Some days will be harder than others, but like it says back here, a lot of times, in war, yes, people giving up their lives for others, commend them. But if you want to show me you really love me, don't
Mhm.
say that you would die for me. Instead, say stay alive for me. And
Absolutely.
I don't know who said that, but any final thoughts you would like to share as we wrap up, Fatima?
Yeah, I agree with absolutely everything you said. One poignant comment that you made was you can't run from your feelings. If you move, if you go on vacation,
Yeah,
you're going with you.
it's like, I know it sounds funny to
So,
say it that way, but
yeah,
yeah,
but it's true.
yeah.
So it's like, so the reality is that we have to be willing to face ourselves and face our truths. And I think that is at the center of our authenticity and embracing who we are and our flaws, because we all have them.
Hmm.
Ours may be dealing with depression and anxiety.
Hmm.
Somebody else's will be with smoking or addiction or
Hmm.
overspending, or you never know. Everybody
Hmm.
has something that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to be able to understand who you are, embrace who you are, because it's only in that openness where you're not hiding from yourself
Mm.
where you can be healed. And it takes some tough work. It takes It takes grit, but if you've been here this long, clearly you have the grit. And so, yeah, it takes grit and it takes toughness, but in all things work together for the good. And so,
Yes.
even what anybody is struggling with right now, believe it or not, there is a greater purpose. And I'm absolutely certain that it's not just about that person.
Mm.
So just do your best to hold on as best you can. Find your safe place. Call the 1-800 number if you need a little bit more assistance. And I would encourage journaling.
Yeah.
Journaling has been immensely helpful for me, and it doesn't have to be a big old paragraph. 2 minutes of
Yeah.
journaling can do wonders to process what you're feeling. So
Mm.
try to implement those things in your life and stay encouraged. Finally, stay encouraged, because there's got to be a better day ahead. I know that when I've had my worst days, I would say, well, there's no else to go but up, right? There's no else to go but up.
Yeah.
It is possible to change the trajectory of your life. You just have to be willing to look at yourself, to face your hard truths, and do the work to do it.
I just want to say, your ministry, all those things, we will put in the notes, so you'll give it to me, so those listening can have it and check out what Fatima is up to. Again, thank you, Fatima, for coming and sharing, and just having a conversation with me. It's not about one person. It's all of us all together realizing that sometimes we make things a lot more complicated than they are. And why do we care about mental health? Because of the people, because each one of
Absolutely.
us, that's what it comes down to. And I just want to share to those listening that you can stay updated through Revive Ministries through the various platforms. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is the website. And I just want to say goodbye from Revive Ministry Podcast, leaving you with this last quote. And it says, this is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And it says, our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising up every time we fail.